What if everything we've been told about the pyramids is a lie? Deep beneath the shifting sands of Giza lies a truth too dangerous to be taught in textbooks. A truth older than Pharaohs, older than Egypt itself. Could the pyramids have been built by a forgotten civilization? One lost to time, erased from history, deliberately, new satellite scans, sealed chambers never opened, ancient writings never decoded, and whispers of technology far beyond the Bronze Age. This isn't science fiction. This is history's greatest cover-up. Welcome to the forbidden truth behind the pyramids. A journey into secrets buried for 12,000 years, and by the end of this film, you may never look at ancient history the same way again. Beneath the burning sun of the Egyptian desert, the Great Pyramid of Giza looms like a monolithic enigma. For millennia, it has stood in stoic silence, weathering wind, war, conquest, and colonization. Its stones, whispering riddles we have yet to solve. Conventional history tells us it was a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, built over 2 decades by thousands of workers using copper tools and wooden sledges. But as we dig deeper, both figuratively and literally, that version of history begins to crumble. Questions begin to form like cracks in old stone. How could a primitive society with no iron tools, no wheels, and no advanced measuring instruments construct such a precise structure? Why does the pyramid align almost perfectly with true north? And why, in all its colossal grandeur, does it lack the very thing we'd expect from an Egyptian tomb: hieroglyphs, decoration, and a body? The more we scrutinize the narrative, the more fragile it becomes. Modern engineers and architects who have attempted to replicate the design using only the tools attributed to the ancient Egyptians have failed repeatedly. The sheer volume of stone, over 2.3 million blocks, some weighing as much as 80 tons, defies belief. To meet the traditional timeline, workers would have had to place a block every 2 minutes, without rest, error, or interruption, for 20 years straight. That's not just unlikely, it borders on impossible. And yet, here the pyramid stands, as if to mock our assumptions. What if Khufu didn't build it at all? What if he merely inherited it, like a king stumbling upon a palace built by forgotten gods? In 2017, a team of scientists using muon tomography, a technique designed to detect cosmic rays passing through solid objects, discovered a hidden void within the pyramid, a vast chamber at least 30 meters long that had never been accessed, mapped, or even suspected before. This wasn't a natural cavity or a construction accident. It was intentional, built with purpose, then concealed. Egyptian authorities swiftly downplayed the discovery, calling it an architectural anomaly, and barred further exploration. But for those already skeptical of the mainstream narrative, it was confirmation. Something's being hidden, not just from the Egyptian people, but from all of us. Some researchers believe this void might contain artifacts or even knowledge that would append everything we think we know about ancient civilization. What if the builders weren't Egyptian at all, but members of a civilization lost to time, one that predated Egypt, Sumer, and even known human history? This isn't pure fantasy. Around the world, in places like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the Yonaguni Monument in Japan, and submerged cities off the coast of India, we find evidence of advanced societies dating back to 10,000 BC, long before the accepted beginning of recorded history. These cultures understood astronomy, geometry, acoustics, and architecture in ways that should have been impossible for their time. One of the most perplexing features of the Great Pyramid is its alignment. It's oriented within 3/60th of a degree to true north, an accuracy that modern GPS systems barely achieve, without compasses or satellite data. How did ancient builders align such a massive structure with such surgical precision? Some have proposed that the builders used the stars, particularly the constellation Orion, which has long been associated with Egyptian mythology. But others suggest a far more radical theory, that the builders had access to a kind of knowledge, perhaps even a kind of science that has since been lost or deliberately suppressed. Inside the pyramid, the so-called King's Chamber is constructed from massive granite blocks, sourced from Mast 1, over 500 miles away. These blocks were not only transported across desert and river, but hoisted into place with a level of precision that modern machinery would struggle to match. The granite itself contains quartz crystals, materials that are piezoelectric, meaning they generate an electrical charge under pressure. Could the Great Pyramid have been more than a tomb? Could it have functioned as a giant energy generator, harnessing the Earth's natural frequencies to produce power? This might sound like science fiction, but ancient cultures around the world consistently describe the pyramids not as tombs, but as power places, centers of energy, learning, or spiritual elevation. The Mayans, the Chinese, the Cambodians all built pyramid-like structures. Why is this form so universal? Why do so many ancient myths refer to golden ages, floods, and lost civilizations that fell from grace due to forbidden knowledge? And why does modern archaeology consistently ignore these parallels? The erosion patterns on the Sphinx offer further fuel for the fire. Geologist Dr. Robert Schoch has argued that the weathering seen on the Sphinx's body is consistent with prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall. But Egypt hasn't seen such rainfall since around 10,000 BCE, long before the rise of the dynastic Egyptians. If the Sphinx is older than Egypt itself, what else have we misunderstood? Could the pyramid complex at Giza have been built not 4,500 years ago, but perhaps 12,000 years ago or more by a civilization wiped out by some cataclysmic event? This brings us to the concept of historical amnesia. What if humanity has risen and fallen more than once? What if there have been previous cycles of civilization, each one rising to great heights before collapsing under the weight of its own hubris or falling victim to cosmic disasters like floods, asteroid strikes, or geomagnetic upheavals? The surviving stories are myths, legends, and ancient texts, could be fragmented memories of real events, distorted by time but not invented from whole cloth. Atlantis, Mu, Lemuria, names echo through cultures worldwide, disconnected by geography but united in theme. And if such civilizations once existed, it stands to reason that their knowledge would ever survive would be considered too dangerous, too paradigm-shattering, to be made public. Think of what it would mean for modern religion, science, and power structures. If it were proven that another far more advanced civilization existed before recorded history, the implications would be so. It's no wonder, then, that the institutions responsible for preserving history, universities, governments, museums, are often the ones with the most to lose. But let's not forget the colonial context. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, European powers looted Egyptian antiquities by the thousands, taking sacred objects, scrolls, and even whole monuments out of the country. Many of these artifacts disappeared into private collections or institutions where they remain unstudied, locked away from the public. What were they hiding? And more importantly, what did they find that convinced them this wasn't just ancient art, but a roadmap to something far greater? We live in a time where technology allows us to look beneath the earth, scan inside mountains, and decode ancient languages. And yet, when it comes to the pyramids, the guardians of knowledge seem unusually reluctant. Why? Is it academic pride? Religious sensitivity? Or is it something darker, a conscious effort to keep the world from remembering who we once were? Whatever the answer, one thing is clear. The story of the pyramids is far from complete. The stones may be silent, but the questions they raise are deafening. We are standing at the edge of a revelation that could rewrite history, reframe science, and redefine humanity itself. The only question now is, are we ready to hear the truth? In the silent symmetry of the pyramids lies a pattern, one that repeats across continents, cultures, and centuries. From the jungles of Mesoamerica to the remote highlands of Indonesia, from the steppe of Central Asia to the Nile Delta, the pyramid appears again and again, like a ghost of forgotten genius. Yet official historians call it coincidence. They argue that cultures separated by oceans just happen to build identical shapes, aligned to the stars, with near impossible engineering, independent of one another. But ask yourself this: how many coincidences must stack up before it becomes a conspiracy of silence? The pyramid form is not just architectural, it's symbolic. Across ancient civilizations, it represented power, transformation, cosmic order. In some cases, these structures were said to be stairways to the gods, or energy collectors, or even timekeeping devices. In Teotihuacan, the Pyramid of the Sun aligns with the Pleiades star cluster. In Cambodia, the temple complex of Angkor Wat mimics the constellation Draco. In Egypt, the three pyramids at Giza mirror Orion's belt with near mathematical precision. What could explain such uncanny celestial synchronicity? Were ancient people globally connected? Did they share a knowledge system that has since been dismantled, buried, or destroyed? One possibility, as fringe historians and researchers have long argued, is that these cultures were all inheritors, not creators. The real builders came long before they built, they vanished, and the remnants of their work were misinterpreted, reused, or absorbed into later societies who claimed them as their own. The pyramids, then, may not be national treasures, but the shared legacy of a global mother civilization, one that existed before recorded time. Call it Atlantis, Mu, or the first people. The names don't matter, the patterns do. Consider the uncanny structural similarities between the pyramids of Giza and those of Mesoamerica. Despite being on opposite sides of the Atlantic, both are oriented astronomically, built with massive stone blocks, and designed to resonate with the earth. The Mayans believed their pyramids vibrated with divine energy during equinoxes. The Egyptians built shafts that pointed to specific stars. Were these people just intuitively brilliant, or were they following blueprints passed down through time, perhaps even preserved in oral traditions or encoded in myth? Let's not forget that every culture has its flood story. The Bible's deluge, the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, the Aztec tale of the five sons, the Indian story of Manu and the fish. These aren't simply moral tales, they may be fractured memories of a real global cataclysm that wiped out a prior age of man. If a great flood destroyed most of the Earth's civilizations around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, as geological evidence like the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests, then what few survivors remained would have clung to knowledge just enough to keep sacred sites alive, though their true meanings were gradually lost. The pyramids of Giza might be among the oldest of these surviving monuments. Even mainstream Egyptologists now concede that there is no definitive record of their construction. No texts describe how they were built. No tools have been found nearby. And the so-called quarry marks linking Khufu to the Great Pyramid were discovered under extremely suspicious circumstances, behind sealed walls, by a team whose findings were never independently verified. If that's the cornerstone of the entire Khufu narrative, then we're building our understanding on a house of sand. More revealing are the acoustics within the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. Sound engineers and researchers have noted that specific frequencies resonate unnaturally within the chamber's granite walls, creating standing waves vibrations that amplify and sustain themselves. This isn't accidental. It suggests that the chamber was tuned. But for what? Some believe it was for spiritual rituals. Others suggest it was part of a larger machine and energy system designed to harness frequencies emitted by the Earth itself. Either way, this isn't the design of tomb builders. It's the work of sound engineers and physicists far ahead of their time. The Greek historian Herodotus wrote of underground chambers and mysterious machines beneath the pyramids. Modern scans have confirmed there are voids and tunnels beneath the plateau that remain unexplored. When Egyptian archaeologists are pressed on these anomalies, the answers range from vague to dismissive. Why is access to certain chambers strictly controlled? Why is no modern excavation allowed near the Sphinx's paws, where a supposed hall of records is rumored to be buried? Is it simply to preserve heritage or is it to preserve secrets? Colonial powers were the first to systematically strip Egypt of its past. In the 1800s, British and French explorers carted off obelisks, statues, and scrolls to private collections and museums. But they also reported findings that have since disappeared, references to metallic objects, unknown languages, and chambers that no longer exist. Many of their personal journals were lost or redacted. It's possible these early adventurers stumbled upon something that didn't fit the narrative, so rather than rewrite history, the world chose to erase evidence. The suppression continues even today. Alternative historians like Graham Hancock, Robert Bauval, and John Anthony West have faced ridicule, professional ostracization, and censorship for daring to suggest that Egypt's monuments may be older than currently accepted. Their crime, asking why the mainstream model of history is so resistant to reinterpretation even when the evidence demands it. We celebrate science for challenging dogma, yet when it comes to ancient history, dogma is often enforced like religion. It's not just Egypt that hides its deeper truths. Similar secrecy shrouds ancient megalithic sites in Turkey, Peru, and India, any of which also suggest a lost epoch of construction and cosmic alignment. We are taught to view these civilizations in isolation, as evolutionary flukes, rather than expressions of a lost global intelligence. But if we begin to connect these dots, what emerges is not a conspiracy theory, but a new human story, one far older and more wondrous than we imagined. The story of the pyramids is not just about stone and sand, it is about memory. Cultural memory, ancestral memory, and perhaps even species memory buried deep within us, whispering truths we've long tried to forget. Every generation looks to the pyramids and asks, who built this? But maybe the better question is, why did they build it? And once we begin to explore that, the pyramid stops being a monument to death and becomes a beacon from a forgotten age, calling out to be rediscovered. We are not alone in this curiosity. Around the world, millions are beginning to question the old narratives. They're reading the ancient texts with new eyes. They're asking forbidden questions. They're beginning to suspect that the history we've been fed is only part of the story and, perhaps the least interesting part, the forbidden truth behind the pyramids isn't just who built them. It's what those builders knew and why someone went to such lengths to make us forget. Beneath the blazing Egyptian sky, tourists snap photos and marvel at the sheer scale of the pyramids. But few realize they're standing atop something far more profound. Beneath the sand, hidden by time and bureaucracy, lie network shafts, tunnels, and chambers whose full extent remains unknown even today. While the pyramids capture the eye, it's what lies beneath the Giza plateau that may hold the key to unlocking humanity's forgotten past. Ancient Arab texts, travelers' accounts, and even early colonial journals speak of vast underground halls beneath the pyramids, some lined with hieroglyphs, not found anywhere else, others filled with devices described as metallic, humming, and glowing. These were written off as myth or fantasy until modern scanning methods, like ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging, began to pick up anomalies deep beneath the bedrock. One such anomaly lies directly beneath the Sphinx. In 1993, a team led by Dr. Thomas Debetsky and John Anthony West used seismic equipment to detect a rectangular chamber between the Sphinx's paws, perfectly shaped and unnaturally deep. Though their findings were dismissed by mainstream archaeologists, the Egyptian authorities sealed off the area and banned further scans. What exactly is under the Sphinx, and why has it remained inaccessible for 3 decades? Some believe it is the fabled Hall of Records, a legendary repository of ancient knowledge, said to contain texts from a pre-Diluvian civilization. If true, it could be the single greatest archaeological discovery in human history and also the most dangerous. Dangerous, not because of a curse, but because of what such knowledge could disrupt. Our timelines, our religions, our cultural hierarchies, all depend on a linear model of progress, primitive to modern. But if the Hall of Records contains evidence of advanced knowledge predating the Egyptians, then our entire worldview collapses, and with it, the control mechanisms built upon it. Governments, institutions, and academia all have a vested interest in keeping the past neatly filed on, unchallenged. There are whispers among independent researchers and former insiders that discoveries have already been made, privately, secretly, and without public knowledge. During construction work for tourist facilities in the early 2000s, workers reportedly uncovered a tunnel leading into a hidden shaft. It was lined with inscriptions not in any known Egyptian script. Within days, the area was closed. The workers were reassigned or dismissed. Some were paid off to remain silent. No official explanation was offered. The story disappeared from news coverage. This isn't an isolated event. Throughout modern Egyptian history, similar accidents have occurred. Brief flashes of revelation followed by swift erasure. Why would anyone go to such lengths to suppress archaeological finds? The answer might lie in what those discoveries could reveal. Some alternative historians propose that buried chambers contain not just relics, but remnants of ancient technology. Not laser beams or flying machines necessarily, but tools, mechanisms, or instruments that demonstrate a level of sophistication incompatible with the accepted human timeline. And if such devices exist, they wouldn't just be valuable to historians, they'd be priceless to militaries, governments, and corporations. This is where the story grows darker. Reports, though never officially confirmed, speak of military involvement in certain digs, particularly those funded by foreign institutions. These aren't just tourist excavations, they're deep, classified operations, sometimes guarded by private contractors or national intelligence personnel. What are they protecting? What are they removing? And why are local archaeologists kept in the dark? We may never know, but it begs the question, what if the pyramids were never meant for the dead, but meant to guard something the living were never meant to find? There is an ancient phrase found in mystical traditions, as above, so below. It implies a mirror. What happens in the heavens is reflected on earth, and vice versa. The alignment of the pyramids with the stars may not just be symbolic, it may be literal. What if the design of the Giza complex, including its underground components, was a cosmic coordinate system designed to store knowledge, or to serve as a receiver, perhaps even a beacon? Many cultures believed the gods came from the stars. Some even claimed these structures were built under celestial guidance. Whether metaphor or literal truth, it suggests a design far deeper than mainstream archaeology dares admit. The accepted model says Egypt sprang up as a sudden civilization. One day nomadic tribes, the next stone temples, agriculture, hieroglyphs, and a vast social order. But this idea that a civilization appears fully formed without prior development is absurd. In every other region, we demand evidence of millennia of cultural evolution. Only with Egypt do we accept spontaneous genius. Why? Because admitting a deeper root, a lost precursor civilization, would shatter our carefully built modern story. The implications are staggering. If Egypt was built atop an earlier, more advanced culture, then the pyramids aren't the pinnacle of ancient engineering, they're leftovers. Scaffolding from a forgotten golden age. And if that earlier civilization was destroyed by nature, by war, or collapse, it means humanity may have reached the stars before, and fallen. History may not be a line, but a cycle. One that rises to enlightenment, and falls into amnesia again and again. That makes the pyramids something else entirely. Not tombs, not temples, but time capsules. Architectural warnings left behind by those who came before. They may be trying to tell us something about the nature of time, about our origin, our destiny, and above all, about the cost of forgetting. Every stone, every passageway, every hidden chamber may be encoded with messages not for their own people, but for us, for the future. That would explain the efforts to obscure their true purpose. Because once we remember who we were, we can no longer be controlled as who we are. The pyramids do not belong to Egypt. They belong to the world, to history, to the unborn generations still to come. But before they can speak, we must be willing to listen, not just with instruments, but with imagination, with skepticism, with courage. Because the truth may be stranger than fiction, but it is never less important. Somewhere in the dusty vaults of forgotten libraries and private collections, ancient maps show things they shouldn't. Drawings of Antarctica without ice, landmasses now lost beneath the sea. and most curiously outlines of pyramids in places where, according to official history, they simply don't belong. How could cartographers centuries ago depict locations no one had supposedly explored? These maps, like the famed Piri race map, are often dismissed as artistic license or lucky guesswork. Yet they suggest something far more unsettling: that a global knowledge network existed long before our known civilizations, and that pyramids were part of a system, perhaps even a grid that spanned the earth. If we follow this grid, something extraordinary emerges. The Great Pyramid sits at the geographic center of all landmasses on Earth. This isn't poetic exaggeration. It's a verifiable fact. Its location divides the land equally into north and south, east and west. Why would a tomb need to be positioned with such cosmic exactness? And more importantly, how did ancient builders even know where the geographic center of the Earth was? To do so would require measuring the entire planet, a feat we barely achieved in the modern era. So either the Egyptians had help, or they inherited the knowledge from a people who did. This concept isn't new. Many indigenous legends speak of an earlier time, a golden age when humans lived in harmony with the earth and stars. In these stories, knowledge wasn't discovered, it was remembered. Technology wasn't invented, it was recalled. And then something happened: a fall, a flood, a great forgetting. Those who survived were left with fragments, and from those fragments they tried to rebuild. The pyramids, in this view, are more than monuments. They are mnemonic devices, constructed memories, embedded in stone, to anchor human identity against the tides of time. Ancient Egypt itself may have remembered more than it let on. The earliest dynasties, especially the Old Kingdom, seemed obsessed with preserving not just bodies but knowledge. Priests and scribes guarded secret texts in temples. Pharaohs saw themselves not just as kings but as cosmic intermediaries, guardians of balance, keepers of mat. This was not the language of tribal chiefs or Stone Age monarchs. This was a remnant of something older, something inherited. Even the word pharaoh comes from para, meaning great house, possibly referencing not the ruler, but the institution, or even the sacred structure itself, the pyramid as a repository of something divine. And then, the decline. After the Old Kingdom, Egypt fell into chaos. The pyramids stopped being built. The craftsmanship declined. Later, pyramids, including those of the Middle Kingdom, were smaller, sloppier, crumbling. What happened? If the Egyptians had mastered this architectural brilliance once, why didn't they replicate it again? Unless they never truly understood how it had been done in the first place. Perhaps the builders of the earliest pyramids were long gone, and the dynasties that followed could only imitate their greatness with ever-fading accuracy. The pyramid became a symbol, not of what they could do, but of what they had lost. Modern archaeology often explains this as a matter of resources or political will, but it feels more like the echo of a fading memory, as if Egypt itself was trying to hold on to something slipping through its fingers. Even the grand temples of the New Kingdom Dante match the awe-inspiring mathematical complexity of the Great Pyramid. This is why many now believe the Old Kingdom was not a beginning, but a midpoint, that Egypt didn't rise from nothing, but from the ruins of something even older. Look to the Assyrian at Abydos, a subterranean temple built of granite blocks weighing over 100 tons, fitted so precisely that not even a razor blade can slide between them. Its style is entirely different from other Egyptian monuments, suggesting either a different builder or a radically older construction. Egyptologists placed the Assyrian around 3000 BCE, but they can't explain its water erosion, its anomalous design, or its inexplicable engineering. Some researchers believe it predates Egypt itself, perhaps by thousands of years. Why does this matter? Because it shatters the idea of linear progress. It tells us history isn't a slow march from ignorance to knowledge, but a cycle of remembering and forgetting. If the Assyrian, the Great Pyramid, and other sites are remnants of an earlier world, then that world must have been destroyed, buried beneath floods, sand, or intentional suppression. And those who survived, the so-called first Egyptians, Sumerians, or Mayans, were not inventors, they were inheritors. They carried whispers of a world their ancestors once knew intimately. In this context, myths take on a new weight. The Egyptian legend of Zep-Tepetha first time speaks of a period when gods walked among men, when divine knowledge ruled the earth, when the Nile flowed in harmony with the stars. Scholars call it religious metaphor. But what if it was historical fact trapped in allegory? What if Zep-Tepi was not myth but memory, a memory of a pre-cataclysmic world? Where pyramids were anti-symbols, they were stations in a planetary system designed for something we've yet to understand. We may never know what that system was. Perhaps it harnessed energy. Perhaps it communicated with the stars. Perhaps it encoded the secrets of consciousness itself. But what's clear is this: the pyramids were never meant to be understood by the uninitiated. Their geometry hides numbers, pi, the golden ratio. Their proportions mirror the dimensions of the earth and moon. Their placements align with the stars. These are not the works of brute labor. They are the fingerprints of a lost science, and the greatest tragedy isn't that we lost that knowledge, it's that we pretend it never existed. That we teach children a version of history where humans wandered in ignorance. Until one day, someone invented the wheel and stumbled into civilization. That version is a lie. The pyramids are the proof. Stone doesn't lie, it survives, and it speaks if we know how to listen. The time has come to stop asking who built the pyramids, and start asking, what were they for? Step into the king's chamber, and silence takes on a different texture. It isn't just the absence of sound, it's a presence, a pressure, as though the room itself remembers things no one dares speak. The chamber is made entirely of pink granite, imported from over 500 miles away in Aswan. Each slab weighs dozens of tons, but it's not just the weight or polish that baffles engineers, it's the acoustic resonance. Researchers have noted that humming at certain frequencies causes the walls to vibrate in harmonic waves. This wasn't coincidence, it was designed. Someone understood the relationship between sound, vibration, and matter, on a level we still don't fully comprehend. But again, the official story insists it was just a burial chamber, even though no mummy, no inscription, and no funerary object has ever been found inside. This pattern repeats throughout Egypt. Monuments built to last thousands of years, designed with impossible precision but mysteriously devoid of expected symbolism. Where you'd expect hieroglyphics explaining the pharaoh's greatness, there is only polished stone. No gods, no myths, no stories. As though someone else built the structure for a deeper purpose. And only later did the Egyptians move in, repaint, reassign, and reinterpret the meaning. Yet rather than confront this silence, mainstream archaeology fills in the blanks with speculation dressed up as certainty. But those who dare to deviate, independent historians, rogue engineers, open-minded scientists, are beginning to see the pyramid not as a tomb, but as a machine whose purpose we can only begin to grasp. The proportions of the Great Pyramid encode the dimensions of the Earth with uncanny precision. The base perimeter divided by the height gives us a close approximation of 2. Multiply the pyramid's height by 43,200, an ancient Sumerian sacred number, and you get the polar radius of the Earth. These are not numbers a Bronze Age society, measuring with ropes and sticks, should have known, unless they inherited them. What would such a machine do? Some suggest the pyramid acted as a resonator, amplifying the Earth's natural harmonics, like a gigantic tuning fork. Others believe it was designed to produce wireless energy, echoing the forgotten theories of Nikola Tesla, who believed the Earth itself was a conductor. Still others go further, claiming the pyramid is part of a planetary web, an energy grid left behind by a civilization whose science merged with spirit. They didn't just build for utility, they built with cosmic intent. Even if we ignore these ideas, the engineering is impossible to dismiss. Without cranes, trucks, or steel tools, the builders cut, shaped, and lifted blocks so precisely that even modern lasers can't improve the fit. The outer casing stones, polished to a mirror-like finish, were aligned so perfectly the pyramid would have gleamed like a lighthouse in the sun. From space, it would have appeared as a radiant white beacon. Some ancient accounts even describe it as blinding in the sunlight. Why would a tomb need to shine? Ancient texts from around the world speak of structures that sang, glowed, or buzzed with divine force. Vedic scriptures mention Vimana's flying machines of the gods landing on mountaintops and pyramids. In the Bible, Jacob dreams of a ladder to heaven's stone steps, reaching for the stars. Could these be echoes of a time when pyramids were more than stone piles, when they formed a network of spiritual technical hubs, altering matter, space, or even consciousness? Mainstream scholars scoff at these ideas. They insist workers drag stones with ropes up massive earthen ramps. But no remains of such ramps have ever been found, and no theory explains how 70-ton beams were lifted and aligned with surgical precision. The deeper you explore the logistics, the more implausible the orthodox story becomes. This resistance isn't just academic, it's emotional. Admitting ancient people had greater knowledge is to challenge modern arrogance. Modernity rests on the illusion of supremacy. But what if we're not the pinnacle? What if we're just one peak in a vast mountain range, rising and falling like waves, each with its own forgotten brilliance? The pyramids may be just such a legacy. And if they are machines, we must ask machines, for what? Were they designed to protect, to awaken, to transform? Could their function have been psychological, maybe even metaphysical? The ancient mystery schools believed the pyramids were initiation chambers. Candidates would spend days in darkness fasting, meditating, confronting visions, not induced by drugs but by architecture, by sound, by sacred geometry, by subtle electromagnetic resonance. Modern researchers using EMF meters have detected strange readings within the pyramid, fields that fluctuate with moon cycles, that seem to respond to human presence. Water flows beneath the pyramid through limestone and granite, materials known for energetic conductivity. Could the pyramid have functioned as a hydroelectric conductor, generating not just physical energy, but spiritual power? And perhaps the most unsettling possibility of all, the pyramid wasn't built for us. Not the kind of humans we are today. What if it was made by, or for, an intelligence that existed before us? Human-like, but not human. Capable of feats we can't reverse engineer, a terrifying thought. Not because it's absurd, but because it might explain everything. The silence, the precision, the suppression. The truth may be that the pyramids were never meant to be understood by us. Not in our current state. They are echoes of a time when humanity walked the earth with purpose far beyond survival. Relics, yes, but of a future that already happened, and a past we're only now beginning to remember. And somewhere in their geometry, in their alignment, in the resonance of those massive stones, a message still vibrates, waiting not to be studied, but to be remembered. The Nile River once flowed much closer to the Giza Plateau, curving in a way that now seems unnatural, as though it had been altered or manipulated long ago. Recent satellite imaging and geological surveys suggest the river's ancient path may have been redirected intentionally. If true, then who had the capability to engineer a river system thousands of years ago? And more importantly, why would such precision be necessary? One theory proposes that the pyramids, in relation to the Nile, mimic the layout of Orion's belt and the Milky Way, a reflection of heaven carved into the earth. But this wasn't just symbolism. It may have been functionality. The ancient builders may have known that water flowing beneath aligned stone structures could generate an energetic field. If that sounds far-fetched, consider how modern hydroelectric plants do the same, just without the sacred geometry. In the shadow of such monumental truths, mainstream history begins to feel like illusion, a comforting narrative, carefully constructed, to keep us from asking dangerous questions. We're told that history is a straight line, that modernity is the apex, that ancient people were primitive because they didn't have smartphones. But what if they didn't need them? What if their technology was tuned not to convenience, but to consciousness? The deeper we explore the pyramid, the more we find echoes not of labor, but of timeless genius. Alignments, harmonic ratios, star cycles, knowledge of Earth's curvature, and magnetic fields. These are not tribal obsessions. These are the fingerprints of those who lived in partnership with the cosmos. And perhaps that's why their story was erased. Because such a civilization balanced, aware, harmonious could never coexist with the extractive empires that followed. They had to be silenced, their wisdom buried, their monuments defaced or rebranded, their myths dismissed as fantasy. Egypt becomes not just a cradle of civilization, but a crime scene, where the fingerprints of a forgotten world still cling to stone. This may explain the near-religious fervor with which institutions defend the orthodox timeline. Because if the truth came out, entire disciplines would fall. Textbooks would become obsolete. Degrees would mean nothing. And worst of all, people would start to ask, if they lied about this, what else have they lied about? The Great Pyramid is not just a monument, it is a mirror, and those who gaze into it too deeply begin to see a version of history that is both terrifying and liberating. And within that reflection, new questions rise. Were the pyramids part of a larger global network? Teotihuacan in Mexico, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, Nanmadol in the Pacific, all feature similar alignments, unexplained architecture, and a sense of cosmic design. Could they have been connected? A planetary grid, activated by energy, by ritual, or by knowledge lost to time. Ancient traditions speak of ley lines, invisible rivers of power, crisscrossing the earth, connecting sacred sites in a hidden web, and modern satellite data, it's beginning to confirm it. Many megalithic structures lie on mathematically straight lines, stretching across continents, as if drawn by a hand we've forgotten. And what of those who preserved this knowledge? From the Freemasons to the Rosicrucians, secret societies have claimed lineage from Egypt, not as metaphor, but as memory. Their symbols, the Eye of Horus, the unfinished pyramid, the obelisk, now etched into the architecture of empires. Adopted not for art, but for power. Could it be that today's elites are not just inspired by ancient Egypt, but are its gatekeepers? Do they know something we don't? There's a darker possibility, too, that the knowledge wasn't just preserved, but weaponized. That what was once used to heal and awaken was inverted to control and suppress. That sacred energy systems were stripped of their soul and turned into skeletons for empire. If that's true, then the pyramid is more than a relic. It is a warning. A monument not of what we lost, but how we lost it. And yet despite everything, the truth refuses to stay buried. New discoveries emerge every year. Infrared satellite scans reveal ruins beneath the sand. Seismic studies uncover sealed chambers. And the people, they are no longer satisfied with the official story. Independent researchers, citizen archaeologists, curious minds with drones and open hearts. These are the new explorers, and the story they are uncovering is not of slaves and tombs, but of sages, scientists, and civilizations far older than we dared to imagine. We now stand at the threshold of a new age, not of technology, but of remembering. An age where we stop asking what the ancients didn't know, and start asking what we forgot. The Great Pyramid becomes more than stone. It becomes a key, a door to a forgotten room in the mind of humanity. It waits, not for discovery, but for awakening. And perhaps, if we listen closely enough, not with scanners or tools, but with spirit, we may finally hear what it has been trying to say all along. Far from the tourist routes and postcard snapshots, there are whispers of other pyramids, ones the public has never seen. Deep in the western desert, near the border with Libya, satellite images picked up symmetrical mounds buried under tons of sand. Researchers initially believed they were natural formations, but further analysis revealed sharp edges, angular proportions, and an unnatural uniformity that strongly suggests man-made structures. These pyramids are not part of any tours or museum brochure. No signs, no fences, no government excavation projects. Just desert, silence, and the weight of something deliberately forgotten. Why, if Egypt is so proud of its ancient legacy, are these sites not being studied? What secrets lie beneath that sand, and who benefits from keeping them hidden? It is here that conspiracy gives way to pattern. Again and again, discoveries that don't fit the accepted historical narrative are dismissed, downplayed, or discredited. When alternative researchers push to far questioning the timelines, the technology, the purpose behind the pyramids, they are labeled pseudoscientists or fantasists. And yet, over the decades, many of their crazy theories have later proven true. The age of the Sphinx, once thought to be no older than 2500 BCE, is now reconsidered in light of water erosion patterns. Geologists have confirmed that such erosion could only have occurred during periods of heavy rainfall, meaning the Sphinx may be at least 7,000 to 10,000 years old. That's twice as old as the Egyptian civilization we're taught began it all. So if the Sphinx predates Egypt, who carved it? This leads us to a more profound question. Have we been looking at the wrong people all along? Perhaps the pyramids were not Egyptian at all, at least, not originally. Perhaps they were inherited by the early Egyptians, who retrofitted and reinterpreted them through their own religious lens. After all, there is no mention in any Egyptian text of the construction process. No diagrams, no ceremonial records, no victory inscriptions. For a civilization that documented everything from grain storage to religious hymns, the absence of a pyramid construction narrative is deafening. It's like walking into a modern nation with skyscrapers, but no architects, no blueprints, and no building records. This absence is not oversight. It's evidence. Evidence that the pyramids came from an era so distant, so mythic, that even the Egyptians viewed them with reverence and mystery. Ancient priesthoods likely guarded fragments of knowledge passed down from that forgotten time-kept secret, shared only with initiates, and eventually lost altogether. Over generations, the meaning of the monuments faded. What was once functional became symbolic. What was once knowledge became dogma. And so, layer by layer, truth was buried beneath story, stone, and silence. And yet, the pyramids endure. They defy time. Empires have risen and crumbled. Religions have formed and fractured. Technologies have evolved and died, but the pyramids remain. Their stones unyielding, their angles precise, their mystery intact. In an age obsessed with digital permanence, nothing we build today will last more than a few centuries. But these ancient monuments were built to outlast memory itself. That alone should tell us something. The builders weren't simply constructing for themselves. They were sending a message across millennia. What if we're finally ready to receive it? The rise of global connectivity, citizen science, and independent research is forcing open doors once held tightly shut. It is no longer possible for a handful of institutions to control the narrative. Footage of strange anomalies, new pyramid-like formations, and uncovered shafts are shared widely within minutes of discovery. The public, for the first time in modern history, is becoming part of the investigation. We are no longer passive recipients of history. We are participants in its rediscovery. Even within science itself, cracks are forming. Physicists now entertain the idea that consciousness might not originate in the brain, but be afield something external, something ancient. If so, then perhaps the pyramid was never a machine in the industrial sense, but a bridge, a structure designed to interface between the physical and the non-physical, between body and mind, between man and cosmos. It might explain why ancient rituals took place inside, why initiates fasted, meditated, and emerged, changed. Perhaps the pyramid wasn't just an object, but an experience. The evidence of such intentional design continues to mount. Deep within the heart of the Great Pyramid, in a chamber where no light reaches, strange electromagnetic readings have been detected, spikes that pulse in rhythmic intervals. At first, these were written off as equipment glitches, but repeated measurements showed consistent patterns, suggesting a low-frequency resonance coming from the structure itself. The pyramid isn't just interacting with its environment, it may be emitting something, information, energy, or something beyond both. This flips everything we've believed about the ancient world on its head. The pyramid was not primitive, it was advanced, not symbolic but functional. And its builders, whoever they were, understood principles that modern science is only now beginning to glimpse. It's possible they were not simply engineers, but philosophers, cosmologists, spiritual physicists who lived in a different kind of civilization, one that didn't separate science from spirit, math from meaning, or architecture from consciousness. That is the world we've lost. And the pyramid is its monument. A message written not in language, but in proportion, in vibration, in light and shadow and celestial alignment. A message that tells us, you are more than you remember. You come from more than you know. And you are destined for more than you've been told. Far beyond Egypt's borders, pyramids rise from the jungles of Central America, the highlands of Indonesia, and even the frozen tundra of Antarctica. The last remains fiercely debated. How could so many cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, build such eerily similar structures? The academic response is predictable: coincidence or parallel evolution. But coincidence wears thin when stone-for-stone alignments, sacred proportions, and astronomical orientations appear again and again in cultures with no known contact. The Mayan pyramids at Tikal, the step pyramids of Gunung Padang, the Chinese mounds in Xianichuan, a whisper from a global language now lost. Could the pyramid have been more than a structure? Could it have been a symbol, a signal used by an ancient civilization that once spanned the planet? If that sounds impossible, it's only because we've been conditioned to think small. Our history books paint the ancient world as provincial tribes in loincloths, huddled by firelight, unaware of each other. But the earth itself holds a different memory. Ancient maps show accurate longitudinal grids centuries before the invention of the marine chronometer. Megalithic sites, from Stonehenge to the Easter Island statues, align with each other in geodesic precision. The old assumption that contact between continents only began with Columbus has already crumbled under genetic, linguistic, and archaeological evidence. What we now realizing is far more provocative: that there may once have been a mother civilization, a progenitor culture that seeded knowledge across the globe in a time before written history. And the pyramids may have been its signature. This theory was once dismissed as lunacy. But then came the discovery of Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, a site over 12,000 years old, complete with massive T-shaped pillars carved with animal symbols, astrological codes, and hints of ritual sophistication. It predates agriculture, writing, and every known city by thousands of years. And yet, it exists. Not as myth, not as speculation, but as stone. Unmistakable, undeniable, and unexplainable by the mainstream narrative. Who built it? Why? And where did the knowledge come from? This is not the only anomaly. Underneath Lake Titicaca, divers discovered ruins of what appears to be an entire city, one that could date back to a time when the lake was dry. The Yonaguni Monument, off the coast of Japan, features submerged terraces and steps carved into solid rock. And deep in the Bolivian Andes lies Puma, Punkua site, whose interlocking stone blocks are machined with precision rivaling modern factories. Yet we're told over and over again, these were built with stone hammers. The pattern becomes obvious once you stop looking for a proof to support the accepted story and start asking what the evidence actually shows. What emerges is not a random collection of impossible sites, but the ghost of a forgotten world, a world that understood Earth's magnetic fields, celestial cycles, and the power of sacred geometry. A world that didn't build upwards just to honor the heavens, but to tap into the very energy of the cosmos. Perhaps that's what the pyramids were all along, not temples to the gods, but conduits to something greater. A bridge between the material and the metaphysical. Some believe the pyramid form is not arbitrary, it mirrors the molecular structure of crystals, the spiral of galaxies, the energy fields found in nature. Ancient texts, like those attributed to Thoth or Hermes Trismegistus, speak of a divine architecture through which the universe was shaped and which humans could mirror through sacred construction. Build in harmony with the universe, and you unlock its secrets. That was the promise. That was the legacy. But over time, that knowledge was buried. Catastrophe came not once, but perhaps many times. The younger dryast impact theory, gaining traction in geological circles, suggests that a comet or asteroid struck the Earth around 12,800 years ago, causing massive climate shifts, extinctions, and the collapse of whatever civilization may have existed. Flood myths from nearly every culture, from Noah's Ark to Gilgamesh's deluge, may not be metaphors, but fragmented memories of a world-ending event. In that chaos, the survivors carried only fragment symbols, stories, and architectural blueprints preserved in stone. And here's the chilling part. What if we're next? The same signs: climate instability, technological overreach, spiritual amnesia. With us now, we stand at the edge of potential collapse, armed with data but starving for wisdom. The ancients may have faced the same crossroad. The pyramids, then, are not just monuments, they are messages. Not just memories, but warnings. Encoded in their perfect alignments, in their enduring silence, is a simple truth. Civilizations rise, and they fall. What determines the difference is what they choose to remember, and what they dare to question. The Great Pyramid, in this view, becomes less a riddle and more a mirror. It reflects not just what was but what could be again. It challenges us to rise to the occasion, to awaken the latent genius buried under our digital distractions, and to remember what our ancestors once knew, that we are not separate from the earth, not strangers to the stars. We are the same minds that once measured the heavens, who once turned stone into song, who once looked into the void and built something eternal. Perhaps that's why we keep returning to the pyramids. Not to marvel, but to reconnect. Not to take pictures, but to remember. Because somewhere inside us, under the noise of modern life, is a voice as old as time, a whisper calling us home, not to a place, but to a purpose. The deeper you travel into the heart of the pyramid mystery, the more you realize it was never about stone. It was about memory, not the personal kind, but a civilizational memory. One stored not in scrolls or spoken word, but in architecture, alignment, resonance. The Great Pyramid was not built to be seen. It was built to be understood, and only by those ready to abandon everything they thought they knew. It is not just a structure, it is a cipher. And slowly, piece by piece, we are beginning to decode it. Recent discoveries have reignited questions many thought were long buried. In 2017, scientists from the Scam Pyramids project detected an enormous void above the Grand Gallery using muon radiography, a type of cosmic particle imaging. This chamber, as large as a cathedral, had gone undetected for thousands of years. No access point, no markings, no known purpose. What was it for? And what else lies hidden in the depths of this supposedly well-studied monument? The official response was predictable. It's probably just a structural cavity. But those who've studied the pyramid closely know better. Nothing in its design is accidental. Every chamber, shaft, and corridor is aligned with mathematical and cosmic precision. So why would the builders hide a space that size? Was it sealed deliberately to keep something in, or to keep something out? And what if more such chambers exist, waiting silently beneath tons of granite and limestone, just outside the reach of conventional tools? The answers may lie in the forgotten sciences. Ancient tradition spoke of the Akashic records, a cosmic memory field said to store every thought, action, and moment in time. Shamans, mystics, and sages claim to access it through sacred sites, trance states, and temples built with precise ratios. Could the Great Pyramid have served a similar purpose? A kind of consciousness amplifier, built to tune the human mind into a larger field of knowledge. This is no longer purely mystical speculation. Today, physicists explore the possibility of information being a fundamental building block of the universe. In this framework, structures like the pyramid may have functioned as access points, keys to a universal library. And this may be the true reason the pyramid has been so aggressively misunderstood, mislabeled, and ignored. Because if we truly grasp its purpose, we will no longer be able to justify the way we live. We will see that our cities are designed for consumption, not consciousness. That our education indoctrinates rather than enlightens. That we've traded a legacy of starbound builders for a world of strip malls, noise, and screens. And the pyramid will not just reveal a lost civilization, it will indict the present one. But that future is not inevitable. The pyramid is not just a relic of what was, but a seed of what could be. Its geometry speaks a language older than words, one still decipherable by those who listen. Its design reminds us that sacred architecture is not about ego or worship, but alignment with the earth, the stars, the self. And in rediscovering that alignment, we may rediscover what it means to be human. This is the revolution hidden in plain sight, not in protests or politics, but in perspective. A shift from viewing the ancients as superstitious primitives to recognizing them as master engineers of body, soul, and stone. Acknowledging that intelligence is not linear, and that time is not a ladder but a spiral. We are not climbing upward, we are circling back. Back to the pyramids. Back to the origins. Back to the beginning. We've forgotten. In doing so, we face our greatest fear. That we are not the first. That others came before us wiser, more advanced, more in tune. And that they vanished not by chance, but by choice or catastrophe. Perhaps they foresaw a future they couldn't stop. Perhaps they left these monuments as beacons. Or perhaps they didn't vanish at all. Perhaps they moved on, transcended, evolved, and what we now call gods or aliens are simply echoes of them. Those who walked before and wait for us to catch up. The Great Pyramid, then, is not the end of a story. It's the invitation to begin one. It calls not just to historians and archaeologists, but to seekers, artists, scientists, dreamers, to all those who sense that there is more than we are told. It challenges us to wake up, to step beyond the veil of official history, to remember that truth does not crumble, it endures. Just like the stone, and if you listen, truly listen, you might hear it too. Not with your ears, but with your bones. That low hum, that ancient pulse. The heartbeat of a forgotten world still echoing beneath the sands of Giza, waiting for the world to finally remember what it means. To build, to align, to know. The sun sets over Giza, casting long golden shadows across stone that has stood unmoved for thousands of years. Tourists drift away, their photos taken, their questions unanswered. But the pyramid remains silent, unshaken, a monument not to death, but to remembrance. It watches us as it always has, not with judgment, but with patience, for it knows something we've forgotten. That truth waits. Always, beneath the sand, behind the stories, beyond the reach of those who fear it. We often speak of lost civilizations as though they were myths, cautionary tales wrapped in allegory. But what if the real caution lies not in their fall, but in our refusal to hear what they left behind? What if the pyramids aren't ruins, but repositories, time capsules, storing not just history, but a code of consciousness, a blueprint for aligning human life with the rhythms of the cosmos? Science now tells us what the ancients always intuited, that vibration is the root of all matter, that frequency shapes form, and that geometry governs the structure of the universe itself. The builders of the Great Pyramid didn't guess these truths, they encoded them in limestone, in granite, in cosmic ratios so precise that they remain unmatched by our most advanced machines. This wasn't guesswork, it was legacy, and legacy cannot be faked. That is why the pyramids still stand, while modern structures decay. That is why they still baffle us, even as we orbit planets and probe galaxies. Because they weren't built to be impressive. They were built to endure, to survive us, to wait for the moment, perhaps this moment, when humanity would reach the threshold of forgetting and find itself face to face with what it left behind. There is power in that moment, a power deeper than politics, greater than war, more enduring than any empire. The power of rediscovery, the power of knowing that history did not begin with us, and it will not end with us. That somewhere behind the veil of accepted truth lies a story far older, far grander, and far more humbling than anything we've been taught. This story does not erase religion, it transcends it. It does not dismiss science, it fulfills it. It does not shame our modern achievements, it challenges them, because it asks, if we have built cities that stretch to the sky, yet forget the stars that guide them, have we truly advanced? If we possess data without wisdom, motion without meaning, speed without direction, have we truly progressed? The Great Pyramid is not just a monument to what was, it is a reminder of what could be, a challenge not to our muscles, but to our minds, not to our machines, but to our memory. It calls us to rebuild, not in stone, but in soul, to align our lives with higher principles, to remember that knowledge without harmony is noise, that progress without purpose is peril. And so, the story ends not in revelation, but in return. We return to the beginning, not the beginning of Egypt or the beginning of civilization, but the beginning of ourselves. The part of us that knows, beyond logic, that we were meant for more, that we come from greatness not yet fully understood, that the pyramids are not the tombs of kings, but the footprints of giants, beings who walked this earth with eyes on the stars and hearts tuned to the universe. Maybe they left, maybe they fell, maybe they became us, but whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. They left a message, and it's still here, carved in silence, written in stone, waiting for us to listen.